Welcome, everybody, to the Minnesota Sports Collaboration Podcast Show, where we highlight all of our Minnesota content creators, shows, and friends here on the program. Poppy, how's it going?
It's going great, man. I'm excited to come together with all of our friends. You've heard them on our show, or if you're listening on their show, maybe you've heard us jump in with them. But every week, we're going to have little teasers and snippets from everybody's shows in one spot on all of our feeds so you can get a little taste. And hey, if you haven't listened to one, go check them out. Throw everyone a quick little subscribe, and let's make everyone happy. Now, Isha, what's the first one we have here for this week?
We're going to throw to LockedOn Wild. Our boy Seth Topol drops daily Minnesota Wild content with a wide range of guests. Here's a quick clip of some of his recent content.
And we'll finish by talking about a recent article by Mr. Scott Wheeler of The Athletic. Now, he has been doing prospect rankings from 32nd to the NHL all the way up to the top, and has been doing those rankings each and every day on The Athletic. And so a lot of fans of the Minnesota Wild have been waiting to see when the Wild would join that list. And the Minnesota Wild ranked as the third best farm system in the entirety of the NHL. And those of us in the Wild media landscape, the Wild prospect landscape, the Wild podcast landscape, have been saying this since the season started. In fact, Gabe Foley of Recruit Scouting came on the show about a month ago, right before 2021 ended. And we looked at the Wild's prospects and said, this is a very deep and dangerous farm system that should start getting some national recognition. Well, lo and behold, here we go. It's pretty easy to see why Wheeler would rank the Wild as a top three. I mean, they were ranked number 8 in his rankings last year for 2021. You've got the likes of Matt Boldy, who is his top-ranked prospect in the Wild system, who is coincidentally tearing it up at the NHL level right now. So obviously a prospect that is ready to make a huge statement, and already has at the NHL level. So Wheeler just loves what Boldy brings to the mix, and he's showing it off at the NHL level. You've also got Marco Rossi, the second-ranked prospect according to Wheeler in the Wild's farm system, a point-per-game player in Iowa, and is going to get a chance to showcase his talents fully at either the end of this season or for sure next year. Third best prospect, according to Wheeler, is Jesper Wallstedt. We've talked about him quite a bit here on this show. Is just continuing to tear it up in any league he plays in, working his way through the Wild's farm system. He'll make a mark on this team before all is said and done, and before too long. We'll probably end up in Iowa next season, but has the legit goalie makeup to be a true ace goalie in this system. And just to round out the top 5, Carson Lambos, defenseman that the Wild took last year, who continues to light it up with the Winnipeg Ice. And top 5, of course, is Kalen Addison, who has split time between the Iowa and Minnesota Wild and looks to factor in substantially with next year's team. And maybe even, depending on how things go with injuries and such, maybe even playing a big role down the stretch for Minnesota as well. So it's not hard to see with a top 5 of those prospects why the Wild are in the top 5, because you look at where the Wild drafted each of these players, and according to Wheeler, he says, when the Wild drafted Matt Boldy at 12, he ranked 7th on my board. When they drafted Marco Rossi at number 9, he was 3rd on my board. When they drafted Jack McBain at number 63, he was 22nd on my board. When they drafted Marshall Warren at number 166, he was 71st on my board. When they drafted Pavel Novak at 146, he ranked 76th on Wheeler's board. Even Beckman, who they drafted number 75, ranked nearby at 83rd on Wheeler's board. And the same goes for Murat Hustindinov, who slotted 48th on his list when the Wild picked him at number 37. Wheeler also goes on to say those players gave the Wild an upper echelon group before the 2021 draft. They drafted 2 players who ranked in his top 15 without a single top 15 pick. Wallstead was 12th on his board. The Wild took him 20th. Lambos was 15th, and the Wild took him 26th overall. And a third player, Jack Pert, who ranked higher on my list than where they got him, 37th on his board, and the Wild took him 45th. This is another of my high praise areas for Bill Guerin. Bringing in Judd Brackett and letting him oversee the draft in its entirety. Being willing to admit, not a huge draft guy. And so Guerin said, we're going to bring in somebody that is. Let him do his thing. If there need to be any trades made, we'll facilitate. But Bill Guerin perfectly happy to step aside and allow Judd Brackett to handle the draft. And, I mean, what more can you say? It is more than worked out so far for the Minnesota Wild, and looks like it's going to continue to for the next few years.
Again, if you like what you heard, you can follow all of Seth's great content by searching LockedOn Wild wherever you get your podcasts, or checking him out on social at LockedOn Wild.
Next, we have yours truly, the Sota Pod. We'll tease our other contributors later, but Hoppy and I talk everything Minnesota Wild beer and hockey. Here's a teaser from our most recent episode.
Cheers.
Cheers. I'm
boys.
Gonna open a new one over here.
Oh, what is it?
Finish the quad. Transcendent. So
that's another one that I have in a crawler.
yeah, we're working with just some different IPA recipes. This is a no-coast IPA. It's got Citra, Simcoe, and Strata hops in it. We're going for like a dank strawberry patch, strawberry lemonade with that little citrus finish, but something with that Simcoe and Citra hop really brings out some of the lemony side of it. And so that's what we were trying to brew. I think we're pretty close to it. We still play with the recipe a little bit here through these beginning batches, and that's out there on shelves just in here in late December, early January.
Nice. And I mean, that's the fun part, right? You get to come in, take what's already a good beer and start coming up with creative ideas and new things you can try from a brewing perspective. But again, you're a couple months in now on the ownership of the brewery. Is that right, Jason?
Yeah, I gotta admit. Okay, so with the brewery came a great brewer that I think is just under marketed. I don't know how else to say, like, and I'll be the first to admit I had not drank Wabasha beer prior to April of last year. And so coming in here and like sitting down and tasting through the beers, like I was blown away. Like, not everything's great, but like everything is really good. And how do you take this like great, really great beer and just get it to places? That's really what my job is. And with Brett, it was a little like we brewed with sometimes you when you're selling a brewery, and I don't want to tell the story for Brett, but it's like you're not going to reach outside the box to do something that's risky when there's an acquisition occurring or like the brewery was on the market for a period of time. And so that's where I all credit to Brett for all the beer here. Like that dude, I love working with that guy, and they're like this term's terrible, starchy term, synergy. We took the learning
synergistic collaboration.
I mean, we got lagers coming out. He's got a sour coming out. We've got a barrel aging program. Like, we're just going and like just pushing all in on things. And that's where, I would say like the one thing I've done is like take the shackles off. Like he'll throw some things at me sometimes. Like I think I told him at one point, like, I don't care how much you spend on hops. Just, he's like, remember that one time you told me that, Jason? I'm like, yeah, that was a different mood. But one of the things, like taking the shackles off, we got.
Ooh, that's awesome.
The Night Queen barley wine.
Cool.
And so this first rendition, this is the first barley wine brewed at Wabasha, but that is also in some barrels. We got an apple brandy barrel and some bourbon barrel. we'll do blending, just starting small, but getting that momentum going from a barrel aging program. So that's going to be a barrel aged beer moving forward. But this first year, we just had the raw beer to do, and it's a really drinkable barley wine. That's what we're going for there, because once you barrel it up, we didn't want it to be too hot. We want to be brewing beers that are highly drinkable.
Okay.
Hobby, we'll have to get the Brews and Bruins guys to take
I
a
knew
taste.
that was right where your brain was gonna go. So obviously there's like the exciting stuff coming in and making some of these changes and like the positive. You've never run a brewery before.
Yeah.
What's just like slapped you in the face the first couple months where you're like, I did not know that this was at all part of the process?
It's two things: seasonality, especially in like the tap room, but also in liquor stores. Fuck dry January. That's a silly concept. It's sober October. If you want to do it, it's sober October, not dry January. Okay, and definitely not.
It has to
October's
rhyme.
the start of hockey season, Jason. We can't do that.
No, you get back into shape. Training camp. There you go. It has to rhyme or fuck it.
People that try, I think people that try dry January are probably setting themselves up to fail. So why start it in the first place? I kid. All due respect to anybody that does dry January, any of that stuff, like
not really.
and anybody that's sober, like, but touche. You got me. Damn it. So where the hell was I?
Seasonality, and then there was a second point.
Kick my ass, because coming into the business, like you make acquisition, there's all these one-off costs, and you're like, you look at the bank account, and you're like, geez, all right, didn't expect that to happen. So you feel that, and so that's one thing. The other thing that, like, man, this is like going to come off as like a desperate plea for like sales and marketing people to be like, we need to go help this guy. But honestly, like, learning to sell beer was really funny to me. And so I'll just tell the story. Like, week one, I go out and I'm out there selling, and I decide I'm going to go to restaurants, and I'm just going to like drop in at restaurants. But we've got this Japanese Saisan, so I'm like, I'm going to go to like these specific restaurants all across town, drive over there and like do the whole thing. Like, what an utter failure. So the process for selling to bars and restaurants is very different than selling to liquor stores, is very different than selling a crowler in the tap room, is very different than selling a tap beer in the tap room. These are like so when we sat down, there's like 4 discernible like sales processes there that I just had to learn and fail a lot through, and still fail a lot in. And it's like a great humbling experience, because at the end of it, like, even when I fail, I feel like I'm up there like playing baseball again, where it's like, I batted like 400 today. That's pretty good. Like, I only got hung up on once. This isn't so bad. Or like the eternal, like, they're in a meeting. Oh, this is the 5th time that they're in a meeting. Like, all right, we won't call back. It's just every day there's something there, but you know, it's so much fun, because at the end of it, you're selling beer. Like, you just have to remember that at the end of the day.
So have you had like a big breakthrough story yet? Like your first big sale that you've made when you're like, oh shit, I can do this?
No.
So what's gonna be what's the one that you're like looking at? And like, I know there's one that you've like gone a couple times, they keep blowing you off. You're like, I'm gonna get this fucker.
So I don't think there's been a big sale, but last week I did tell somebody, I'm like, it's happening, where this momentum and this build. And what hit me was, I looked at our outbound sales, and I didn't have as many like deliveries. Like, every case counts for a brewery our size. Like, we're very small. We're like 500 barrels last year. I hope we do 750 this year, 2022. And so there was stores that ordered 6 brands from us. Like, never in the history of Wabasha have they had 6 beers in cans at the same time. And we're able to service those accounts because we've got inventory to do that. And that was an operational thing that I was like, we need inventory to go and build, and then we can go out and like grow accounts. But if we're growing accounts and we sell to somebody and they sell through and we don't have anything, like, that's ultimate customer disappointment. Again, experience is everything. So that's something that, like, that was a breakthrough for me. But I don't think we've hit home runs. I mean, we launched a Kolsch in the middle of December to the market. This is not Kolsch season. And it seems, again,
man, it's a bitch.
Very contrary, but there was purpose behind that, because by the time the like Kolsch season rolls around. By the way, it's Kolsch of the Wild. Shout out Wild. We can get to sports here, but like that was like, okay, we're launching this in the middle of winter so that when Kolsch season does roll around, I've already got this like baseline build of stores that are ordering it, and then we've got more on top of it that are coming in when the season actually hits. So it seems counterintuitive, but it made a lot of sense at the time. It was the number one selling beer in the tap room, and it's a great Kolsch.
If you didn't hate what you just listened to, you can find all of our content at the Sota Pod on social, that being Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, or by searching the Sota Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Who's up next?
Minnesota Sports Chat. Those new to Ross or Minnesota Sports Chat, you get anything from a unique spin on Minnesota sports to the Rex of a frozen pizza connoisseur.
What percentage would you put Kirk Cousins' return to Minnesota at? And I say that because now over the weekend we have the Schefter report where basically Schefter says the Vikings and Cousins, they'll work something out. He'll probably be there for a little while, and we've seen some other reports come in today. Now, I also look at that and say, well, some of that can just be posturing. You never truly know. But Doogie almost always knows. That's what I tell people. And if Doogie doesn't know, it's because somebody gave him information that was bad. That's what I always tell people. What percentage would you put a Kirk Cousins return to the purple in 2022 at?
It's a great question. It's the number one, would you say, Ross, the number one Minnesota sports talker right now?
Without a doubt.
Now, certainly there's a lot of wild interest. The NBA trade deadline is Thursday, so I get all that. But I think, at least for me, the number one question I've gotten in the last 24 to 48 hours, the future of Kirk Cousins. I can't tell you with 100% certainty either way. I'd love to tell you 100%, Ross, I know. I went on record on TV early last week on Channel 5 here in the Twin Cities saying I expect a trade. Now, that's based on some estimation, based on how 2021 went, the sourness of some people that remain at TCO Performance Center when it comes to Cousins, some of it, him, not getting the vaccine, and he wasn't the only one, but the so-called leader of the team. When you're the quarterback, you're the leader, whether you want to accept those responsibilities or not. He didn't get the vaccine. All right, so some of that sourness is based on that. Now, do I know where Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah stands, where Kevin O'Connell stands? I don't. I saw the Jeremy Fowler report today from ESPN saying Kevin O'Connell is a big Kirk Cousins fan. I get it. I had Joe Theismann, shameless plug for the Scoop podcast. I had Joe Theismann on my podcast last week. He knows some things. He knows some people. Washington football legend. He knows O'Connell pretty well. He knows Kirk Cousins pretty well. Joe Theismann swears to me it was both on mic and off mic. Kirk Cousins is going to be a Viking in 2022. But I said, Joe, are you sure? Like, it could be some posturing. Like Rick Spielman said, regarding Percy Harvin, I'm paraphrasing, but, I'm not trading Percy. Then a few days later, Percy Harvin traded. Like, we see it all the time. Like, I don't think the Vikings would volunteer on background right now. Yeah, we're trading him, right? They want to create the perception, whether it's reality or not, that we're keeping him. I think what's going to happen, Ross, is starting at the Combine March 1st, Kwesi is going to at least solicit offers or at least listen. I don't know how aggressive he'll be in terms of shopping Kirk, but I think he is going to strongly listen. I predicted he'll be traded. So, should I waffle on that, Ross? Now, Theismann knows stuff, right? Who am I to predict anything when Joe Theismann is telling me he's going to be here? And now Adam Schefter over the weekend, insinuating, hey, Kirk is going to be here. Jeremy Fowler, who's plugged in. Although Jeremy was wrong on the Caldwell stuff.
And Schefter's been wrong before, too. He's right an awful.
Yeah, I mean, Adam's fantastic. Jeremy is fantastic. Used to work here in town. Used to cover the Vikings for the Pioneer Press. So I've gotten to know Jeremy at least a little bit. 98% of the time, he is spot on. I don't have any reason to think he's wrong on his report today that Kirk and Kevin have this solid relationship, that Kevin in the interview said, hey, sign me up for Kirk. He also alluded to the idea that all these coaches that interviewed said glowing things about Kirk, or many did. I can tell you this much, Ross. I know this with 100% certainty. Jim Harbaugh was in favor of Kirk Cousins. A lot of us thought this time last week, right? Let's circle back 1 week ago. If we had talked last Monday, Don't you think most people thought Jim Harbaugh, he is going to be the next Vikings coach? Once the news broke, he'll be in town on Wednesday. I think 99.9% of people said, hey, Jim Harbaugh is going to be the Vikings coach. If Jim Harbaugh was the Vikings coach, I think Kirk would have remained. I will, maybe just because I'm a stubborn SOB, I did this with Kevin O'Connell, it worked out. But I've been wrong before too. But I will continue to ride the trade bandwagon. Maybe that's not the right term. The trade possibility until I am strongly led to believe myself. Not from Fowler, not from Schefter, not even from Joe Theismann, who maybe should be in the NFL Hall of Fame. He's in the Collegiate Hall of Fame. He's an NFL legend, right, with his broadcasting background, everything. But until I hear it strongly myself, I'll continue to think that a trade is coming. But I'm telling you, Russ, I feel pretty confident that Kwesi is going to at least listen. I don't think, based on these tweets and what Adam said on the Pro Bowl telecast over the weekend, based on this intel in the last 24 hours, that it is now a 100% certainty that Kirk is remaining a Viking.
You can find this beauty on social at Brendel Ross. That's BRENDEL Ross. And his podcast by searching Minnesota Sports Chat on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Who's up?
Our friends at Sound the Foghorn. Brett, Justin, and Zeke represent Sound the Foghorn from Wild to Whitecaps, killing the analytics and prospect game. Here's a sneak peek at their latest episode.
Hello, State of Hockey. Brett Marshall here from the Sound the Foghorn podcast. If you haven't heard of us, we are an independently run Minnesota Wild podcast hosted by myself and my pals Zeke Boyat and Justin Bakke. We cover everything Minnesota Wild, NHL, Wild prospects, and new this year to our coverage as well is coverage of the Minnesota Whitecaps, provided specifically by our friend Sam Uren, who used to be the assistant general manager of the Whitecaps and now does digital and social media for the Minnesota Wild. On this week's show, as our friend Michael Russo would say, we had a meaty episode covering Scott Wheeler of the Athletics prospect rankings, some of our takeaways from that. We talked about whether or not we think Marco Rossi should be on the roster and the implications of if he is or isn't on that, and debates we had on Twitter about that as well. We also talked about the All-Star game, our takeaways from that. But our main topic this week was whether or not the Minnesota Wild should hand the reins of the starting goaltender from Cam Talbot over to Kaapo Kähkönen. Here's a teaser. And I'm at that point now where I'm ready to say I think Kaapo Kähkönen, to me, has emerged as the goaltender between him and Talbot that deserves to be number one going forward. Is the guy they should look to potentially rely on in the playoffs, and should, if I still think him and Talbot should split. I mean, they're going to have to with, the 40 games in 77 days they have upcoming. But to me, it's a 60-40, 65-35, maybe at a minimum, split between those two with Kähkönen getting the higher majority. And the reason he's been better in every statistical category outside of games played and wins, which are out of his control because he just hasn't played as many games. But you look at Justin, as you mentioned earlier, how well he played last night, giving up just the one goal. Like that hasn't been uncommon. I mean, we saw him steal the game from the Islanders a couple weeks ago. His goal save above expected, I think, has climbed all the way now. I think it's like 5.35 per Evolving Hockey's model. And I think, prior to coming in before that 9-game stretch he played, I think it was in the negatives. So, that's just how good he's been as of late. He's pulled that number out of the negatives into the positives. And I think he had something in the prospects, too, but his save percentage has popped into the top 10 now in the league?
7th.
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up here, yeah.
Yeah, so, I just think he's earned it. I don't know, other than, Knight's rights of, the Talbot being the veteran and, being the guy they brought in, I don't see an argument for why Talbot should be chosen over him as it stands right now. Obviously, that can change. He goes out and has 3 duds in a row. Sure. Okay, fine. But I think as of right now, I think Kaapo should be the guy.
Yeah, I agree. He's 10-3-2. He's top 12 in goals against average, top 7 in save percentage.
Hell, throw him in the Calder conversation.
Yeah,
he's
no
eligible.
kidding.
Yeah, technically.
Still a rookie, apparently. But yeah, something we posted on the Young Guns. He leads rookie goalies in save percentage, top 10 in the league. Top 7 in the league for save percentage. He has a 94 save percentage in his last 5 games and almost 94 in his last 10. Ride the hot hand. No disrespect to Talbot. Yeah, he's the veteran, but Kakkonen's got the hot hand. He just seems like he's taken that next level of development and kind of run with it this season.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I agree with you guys for the most part. I mean, I've kind of, taken it. I don't know. I've kind of changed my tune, but for a while I've been kind of like, we saw him play a good 10 games last year, and then, he collapsed on the stretch. Obviously, rookie goalie. All goalies do that. They're not always aside from the top elites. You're usually not going to hold that level of play, obviously, over the whole season, but. I mean, I think it's pretty hard, like Brett mentioned, to argue, and you guys with the numbers. I mean, and if you look, it's not like last year he did beat Vegas a couple times, but throughout his winning streak last year, he was, a bunch of those games were against, San Jose, Anaheim, etc. I mean, this year he's beating those, he's beating those teams, but he's also beating good teams. I mean, he was great against Washington when they were down like 8 guys.
Boston
he was,
as well.
Boston, Winnipeg, and even New York against the Islanders, he made 40 saves. So, I mean, it's hard to argue against the numbers that he's done. I think, obviously, like Brett said, the playoffs are still a ways away. So, we'll see what happens between then. And usually, NHL teams seem to tend to lean towards the veteran with more experience, as you mentioned. But I mean, obviously, if Kappa still has at the end of the year like almost a 925, getting close to 930 save percentage, and he's ends up with he's like 25-10 or whatever. It's it'll be hard to argue against him. And I mean, it's good obviously because when Talbot went down with his injury originally and was out, I remember a lot of us were kind of worried like, oh, what are they gonna do?
Yeah, like we were talking about, like, do they have to go out and trade for a goalie? Right? Yeah. Like that was in the cards.
I know it's amazing. Like you said before, how quickly things change and I mean, I don't know. It's just like Justin mentioned. It's good to see his, like you said, his development kind of take another step, and maybe show that from maybe 3 months ago we all would have thought, oh, his ceiling's probably a backup goaltender. Maybe he actually does have a chance to be a number one, and in a couple of years have a really nice tandem when Jesper Wallstedt does make his way into the NHL eventually here. So it's I don't know. It's encouraging to have like Brett's mentioned with 2 goalies that you can at least trust to put in the net. No, they're not gonna, at the very least, even though Talbot hasn't been great, he's not usually gonna completely tank your chances of winning. And it's great to even have the guy, as you mentioned, who is the reason you've won games at this point.
Yeah, and I will say, going into the All-Star break with the shutout and then coming out, the 2 games leading in the All-Star break, Talbot did play really well. He had the shutout in there. I mean, another solid performance. Looked great at the All-Star game. So I don't want to say, this isn't me saying Talbot is playing bad. Yeah. I just think Kakkonen is playing better. And it's a good problem to have 2 good goalies. I did want to add that in there. Like, this isn't like a Cam Talbot sucks thing at all. Like, it's just I think Kakkonen's just been better. If you like what you heard, feel free to head on over to Sound the Foghorn. Any podcast platform that you have, we should be there. Look for the Minnesota Wild colors and the iconic Foghorn logo. If we're not on your favorite podcast platform, feel free to let us know on Twitter or Instagram at Sound the Foghorn, all one word. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
If you don't already, follow them on social at Sound the Foghorn and plug that into your favorite podcast platform as well. Who do we got next?
Judd'z Budds. Mutant, Spitter, Sicko, Z. We don't care what you call him. To us, Spokes Z just means elite prospect coverage. Here's a preview of the brilliant ramblings you can hear on Judd'z Budds.
Anson Carter, and this was the 3rd, whatever day that is. These at MN Wild fans, parentheses, and reporters, laughing emoji, talking about their depth after beating an awful at NHL Blackhawks team. Hilarious that he tagged them after calling them fucking awful. Where were y'all after the Winter Classic beatdown, missing Eck, Brodin, and Spurgeon? Shh emoji, cricket emoji. Hilarious. How is that depth treating you? Injuries happen. Can they overcome them? We'll see. People took that and got so fucking upset. It's a take quake. It's a terrible take. It's a dog shit take. It's the dumbest thing anyone said about the Wild this year, possibly. But why are people so mad? First of all, Anson Carter's a fucking beauty, so I think I like the guy. This is people who don't watch your team every fucking day in every game. They don't know shit. Okay, so I'm pretty sure it was like a flippant comment on TV. It was like, yeah, we'll see if their depth can, because I don't think people are used to saying that the Minnesota Wild could possibly be in Stanley Cup contention. But hey, this is what it's like to be a popular team now. Your team is now popular. I don't mean to be a dick, but like for the Wild, that's a pretty new thing to have the national spotlight and be like a legit possible contender. This is what it's like. People that don't watch your team all the time and have to say something about them, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And people are acting like he lashed out first. No, he made the comment on TV, and these fans are tweeting at him like, you motherfucker, like just going bananas. So obviously he's going to clap back. Now, it was a very dumb response, but like shut the fuck up. It's who cares? Like people are gonna say shit about your hockey team that don't know about your hockey team because they don't watch every game. They don't know all the players. They don't know. Now again, this is a very dumb thing that he said because they won like 9 games in a row after that, right? So whatever. But this is what it's like. People are gonna say shit about the team that is wrong because they don't watch as many games as you do. Now Russo, he got like specifically targeted here and reporters, like that's it, laughing emoji. Sorry. So Russo claps back. This is like 14 hours later. I have great respect for you, but since this is a shot at me, and then he tagged the Wild too. At MN Wild went 9-0-1 since that Winter Classic. Some nights without 8 and 9 guys, including the same 3 you mentioned. You watch them once a month. I trust the fans and reporter you're laughing at who watch them regularly. Fucking right through. So get his fucking ass. Now Russo has the right to clap back like that because he literally, even though Carter said it wasn't about him, I mean that's a shot at him. Come on. So then the next day, it's like a 3-day fucking. Oh, it's so funny. Anson Carter, laughing emoji, laughing emoji, laughing emoji, laughing emoji. I don't even follow you, rude. So I don't even follow you. So you know what people say when you assume? BTW. I speak to teams, parentheses, owners, GMs, coaches, trainers, scouts, all caps, every week in addition to watching games. So you can play hero to your at MN Wild fan base all you want. It's all good. Hashtag carry on. Again, such a fucking dumb tweet. And he's getting ratioed into oblivion, by the way. Whatever. I think it's funny. I could give a shit about him saying whatever about fans because I'm from Boston, so people just hate me naturally anyways. This is hilarious. And I personally enjoy it. I tweeted at the time, I hope they go back and forth like every day taking shots at each other, but only one per day. Like, I hope it's fucking like April and all of a sudden you just go to Twitter and you see Russo tweet back at Carter and be like, yeah, you know what? You were fucking dog shit in the show. Like that. Oh my God, it would be so funny. I really want them to go back and forth, one tweet a day for like a year. That would be so goddamn funny. Like, what if the Wild won the Stanley Cup and Carter is just going off still, just shitting on the team like an idiot? Oh, God. Anyways, this is what it's like to have a team that's good, that's relevant, that people watch and talk about. And then there are people that don't watch them. They're going to say dumb shit. It's not a big deal. Get over it. It's actually nice to be a hidden gem and people not talk about your team and not really know anything. Like, it's kind of a blessing in disguise. So stop yelling at Anson Carter. Stop being insulted. Like, if you think as a fan, like, this is so upsetting to me, like, get the fuck over it. Like, who cares? You're going to make him look like an idiot when the Wild go on a run. So it's all good. I just think it's hilarious and I really enjoy it. And I hope it just goes on forever. So that's my take on Anson Carter and that moronic tweet he put out there. And that's the headlines. So let's pay the bills real quick before we go to Iowa. Let's talk about DraftKings, huh? The moment we've been waiting for since September is finally here. In honor of the big game, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the Super Bowl 56, is giving new customers 56-1 odds on either team. Bet just $5 and get $280 in free bets if your team wins. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in New York, meaning you can bet from almost a third of the country. If Sportsbook is not available in your state yet, don't worry about it. Just play DraftKings Daily Fantasy Football Contest for Super Bowl 56. New customers can get a free shot at $1 million in top prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use promo code THPN and get 56-1 odds on either team. Bet just $5 and get $280 in free bets if your team wins. That's promo code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 56. 21 plus. Minimum age and location requirements vary by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for full list of requirements and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Void where prohibited. Gambling problem? Yes. Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Tennessee, call or text TN Redline 1-800-889-9789. In Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. What an ad read. Just nailed it. 10 out of 10 out of the park by me. Credit to me. Gambling and reading gambling related ads.
Dudes fucking rock. If you want more, you can find him every Tuesday, and sometimes we don't really know with him. He's kind of a wild card, maybe even Thursdays, on the Sota Pod feed. So same podcast feed as before, but if you want to follow him specifically, and for some reason you haven't already, you can check him out on Twitter at SpokedZ. Who do we got?
MNCAA, hosted by Nick Maxon. You get your weekly dose of Minnesota's college puck. Here's a look at what you can expect for all 6 Division I programs.
Gophers win big on Friday. Then, for some odd reason, they decided, hey, we won game Friday. We don't got to try Saturday. We got these guys 5-1. Notre Dame goes up 2-0. Minnesota crawls to an overtime loss. This is really the epitaph that's been written on the season was displayed this last weekend. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and you know what? I was kind of weighing the scales there because it's like it's inconsistency on a given weekend, but then hey, it's the consistency of the whole season. This is the way it's gone all year long, and they can't find a way to get out of it. And it's just, and I keep saying we'll see it when we believe it, we'll believe it when we see it. We'll believe it when we see it. We're still waiting. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And when you can come out and beat a team that obviously Notre Dame isn't as much of a slouch as everyone thought, but as they could have been this year, and to get run over by some of the bigger guns, but they're taking advantage of these teams that like Minnesota. They're able to kind of get not humiliated, but kind of just beaten out and just saying, all right, we're gonna come back the next night and do something to them. And you know what? It's the Gophers have fallen victim to it too many times, and they just can't put consistent weekend so far. I wish I could pinpoint what that is and why that is, and I don't know if that's jumping the gun for you a little bit, but it's coming. If something happens now, it might be too little, too late. I don't know, but yeah, the impressive performance on Friday, and then a goal in the second and third periods to only to get beaten in overtime, just not even a minute in. So, what can you do? I don't know. It's hard to make anything of this team this year in terms of consistency, besides just saying, all right, we know how to win a game and lose a game on a weekend.
You know, it is a head scratcher, right? Because you look at the roster, and now it's changed because you have a few folks that are with Team USA over there in Beijing competing with the Olympics. So now, you know, the contributors or maybe the more consistent pieces are off competing on the international stage. So this is sort of that make or break moment for the Gophers. And we kind of touched on this last week, but you know, you wanted guys to step up. You talked about some of the veterans, your Blake McLaughlin's and some other names on the team, but I almost want to say that now whoever slots in for these players, this is their time to shine. And, you know, it's needed. Now is the time where this team has to come together if they're going to make any noise in the Big Ten / the NCAA playoffs. Now is the time to do it.
Yeah, and they might be learning who some of their top line guys and some of their leaders are for next year down the stretch here. The guys who are able to try and get them some success, and obviously with Ben Myers and Matthew Nye gone. I think that's a big hit, and obviously Nye could not be long. Who knows if he has a good Olympics and a good end of the season for the Gophers? He could not also be long for this world. I think he comes back for another year. He'll definitely be a top line guy. But Ben Myers, I wouldn't be shocked if he tries to sign an NHL contract. If I were him, I think there's interest. I bet there's interest there. In a hard-nosed, just kind of a big, just thick guy. If you get what I mean, he's just a big dude, and he's a force, and teams could use that in center. And that's not even just an NHL team. I think there'll be a lot of teams coming after him to be one of those minor league, one of those guys that can just spend a couple years, 2-3 years in the minors and maybe get that skill level up. But he's got the body. He's got the body for the NHL. But it's just a matter of kind of keeping that skill and being able to work past his not that he's short, but for NHL, they're always looking for taller guys. And it's always those shorter Gophers forwards that always have trouble making the NHL past being regulars in the AHL. So I think that would be a perfect role for him. Teams will be clamoring for that kind of thing, for one of those guys that can be a leader and to be a leader quickly, and to maybe play some minutes there for him. But back to the main point too. It's like Chaz Lucius. I feel like this is going to be his time to really shine. This is going to be his team sooner or later, just from a skill standpoint, because it's obviously kind of him and Matthew Nye kind of leading the way up front as the younger guys right now. But he's going to need to lead the way for those for some of those other guys, the Pitlicks and the Huglins of the world, to really get up to speed and to be ready to take the mantle of the Gophers next year. If they have another weekend here of split, that's really I think the best that we can look forward to, because if the Gophers can't, I mean, obviously one season being dominant in the regular season like last year and then being out in the first round, that doesn't dictate that, okay, if they have a weaker season this season, they won't win a game. But odds are, if they make the tournament playing like this, they're not going to make it too far. So it's almost kind of a, hey, let's get these guys, let's play the way we can. And if there's not a lot to be had in terms of the tournament this season, gotta build for the next season.
Just like Judd's Budds, you can find all MNCAA episodes on the Sota Pod feed, with episodes dropping every Friday. Go follow the dedicated college hockey feed on Twitter at MN_NCAA. MNCAA was taken by some douchebag with 0 followers that won't reply to Isha with our very lucrative USD cash offer. Now, Isha, who's the last show that we want to promote here this week?
Brave the Wild. Joey has been in the Minnesota Wild podcast game since 2008. Here's a clip from the chiseled veteran.
Kaprizov and Zuccarello continue to be unbelievable. We had Ensign Carter last night on TNT, the Chicago game, where the Wild went 5-0 on national television, talking about how those guys don't really need a number one center, Kaprizov and Zuccarello, because, well, they would have the puck less and they wouldn't make as many plays, because look at their playmaking skills. It's just unbelievable the way they set up for themselves, for each other, and for Ryan Hartman. That line just needs to be intact as long as possible. It's been fantastic. Ryan Hartman still on pace for incredible goal totals, thanks to the ESPN stats where you could get the projected numbers right out in front of you. Ryan Hartman, speaking of Ryan Hartman and Kirill Kaprizov finally passes Ryan Hartman in total goals on the season, which is kind of funny. He's now at 19. So it took a while, but it happened. It happened a little bit before Valentine's Day, Feb the 2nd. Ryan Hartman is on pace for 36 goals on the season, 66 total points. And yes, Kirill the Thrill is for real. 53 points in 40 games. We have never had anything like that. Never. Even 42 and 35 for Zuccarello. My goodness. Hello, career high. Projected totals for Kirill the Thrill: 106 points. He would be a plus 38 if things keep going as they are. 38 goals. I just said it. Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Makes you feel like pure gold. I mean, it is just wonderful. You just hope and pray that this continues, and man, we just got to step out in faith and believe that this will continue. This is all for real, and just thank God for it in a big way. You saw Jordan Greenway ink a 3-year contract this week with the Minnesota Wild. 3 years, $3 million per, of course, $9 million for the total. What does this mean for Fiala and or Duhaime, as that'll be a continued conversation during the course of this show? That's kind of the question of the week, so to speak. The question of the week, the comparison of the week. That's what it is this week. The Greenway. What does it mean for the future? As it's making it a little more cloudy for some of those guys. The way Fiala's playing, I don't want him going anywhere. That grease line, that's a big reason why the deal happened. Obviously, the grease line is so good. They've been playing so well together, and Greenway's a part of it, obviously, with his size and his abilities, playmaking ability, as we've heard multiple times on multiple shows and from Bill Guerin himself, that Jordan Greenway did lead the Wild in assists last year. And yes, I remember that very well. So he does have playmaking ability, just doesn't score a whole lot, doesn't fight a whole lot. He will sometimes, but not all the time, just here and there. He's not like Foligno, guys like that. But that grease line, they still haven't given up a regular season goal while together. And during the entire season for about 180 minutes approximately. That's about where the number is now after the last couple of games here. MoneyPuck.com was the original website that talked about that, where people have showed that, and it's just unreal. They have not given up a regular season goal together. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. That's a good line. That's a really, really good line, and you don't really want to split that up. There's two lines on the Minnesota Wild you just don't want to split up whatsoever. And then there's another line, which is arguably the second line. There's two players on it, 2 out of 3, that you don't want to split up. Gaudreau is what he is. He's okay. He's okay. Wouldn't mind seeing him drop down to the fourth line and then replaced by a Damien. I just call him Damien Giroux? Claude Giroux. Damien Giroux. He can't even score in the AHL right now. With a Claude Giroux or somebody like that. That would be insane if that took place. The truth of the matter is, somebody somewhere at some point will get traded. Obviously, there's going to probably be some type of move before the trade deadline coming up. And, of course, in the summer, people are going to be traded or, of course, lost via free agency or let go via free agency.
Get your questions in every week by following @BraveTheWild and listen by searching Brave the Wild, Minnesota Wild Podcast.
All right. Thanks to everybody tuning in on Google, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I mean, wherever you get your podcasts from, the best thing you can do for us or any of the content that you heard in this podcast episode, you can go on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, give us and give them 5 stars and a kind review. It goes such a long way. You're already supporting us by listening to this episode, so you might as well go and review us as well. If you're jonesing for more hockey content, go listen through our website, thehockeypodcastnetwork.com. And on your app, please download the episode before you listen, as it just helps all of our business. You can follow myself at VI Sports Talk. You can follow Hoppy at State of Hoppy. And of course, you can find the Sota Pod on all platforms at the Sota Pod. Signing off, I'm Misha Dromi alongside the State of Hoppy. This has been the Sota Pod, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network. We good, buddy?
We good.
Don't fear, just drink some beer and stay wild.